I, like most people living in the United States, have very little connection to my food. I don't know how it's raised. I don't know where it comes from. I'm so disconnected. And that's not how humans are supposed to live. When we look back through history, there's always been such a great connection to nature and to the land and to these animals and these environments that modern technological societies, we're so far removed from that. My name is Chris Brinlee Jr. I'm a multidisciplined adventure athlete and professional storyteller, and I'm a first-time hunter. The San Juans are Colorado's largest contiguous mountain range. It's some of the most stunning and remote and rugged mountain terrain. Being immersed in the heart of that in the Uncompahgre Wilderness really just created this profound sense of grandeur, and it brought to attention how tiny I was amongst this great landscape. In a way, it gave me a great sort of appreciation for the endeavor that I was about to embark upon.
Hard to get up this morning. Pretty tired from the walk-in yesterday.
At the start of the first day, there was already a bit of fatigue from a decent hike in that lasted into the night. And the comfort of camp definitely held a gravity upon me, and I knew that there was wildlife, and that fact immediately presented itself when we glassed just out from the tent and saw a herd of mule deer on the slope. There are opportunities out here if I'm prepared to take them.
It was a 225-yard shot perfectly within range. I just wasn't prepared. I didn't have my earplugs ready, and then when I would try and sight it in on the scope, the sun glare was so bad that I couldn't see anything. And then she got wind and ran off. That was a perfect shot. She didn't know we were there. Back to plan A, go get up on that ridge, do some more glassing. She's long gone.
On my scouting opportunity the week before, I discovered a knoll that seemed like the perfect location to pull out a spotting scope, set up, and glass these parallel slopes off in the distance. Got into position, and we just spent the course of the morning looking and scanning and trying to locate animals. Across the valley, about a mile away, we had spotted a pretty significant size elk herd. For the next hour or so, we just proceeded to study them, observe their movements and their behaviors, and the one thing that I didn't consider during all of my months of preparation was that other hunters would potentially be the most significant variables that I would have to contend with.
It's hard to say, during the afternoons and evenings, they tend to kind of graze and move around up high, but I feel like because they got spooked earlier, they could be bedded down somewhere. So I think today's kind of a wash due to those circumstances. So our best bet's probably going to be to go back to camp, eat, rest, reset, try and get out tomorrow and maybe scope out this side of the drainage, the side of the wilderness, and see if they got pushed over here.
Day 2. Set the alarm. 5:30. There's a crazy windstorm though. Figured there wasn't a whole lot of point going out in that. But I just heard a gunshot not far from camp, so guess the early bird does get the worm. Go see what we can see.
Another day, excited to go out, see what we can see. It's been pretty spectacular so far, but yeah, stoked to be out in the wilderness, and maybe we'll bring home an elk. Neighbors got an elk this morning, just on the high plains across the valley from here, not 1,000 yards away. Horses are heading up to help them pack it out.
My thinking was that since there was a gunshot in our valley, that it could have potentially moved the herd back over to the drainage we had been glassing the previous day. And so I figured we'd get up there and we'd see what we could see. And I knew that the more time I could get observing them, the more I could develop an understanding and a comprehension of what they were going to do. So from our glassing knoll, about 1,200 yards across from us, a cow elk that couldn't have been more than a spot. Pretty soon she's joined by a couple elk calves or yearlings and then a couple more cow. And it was really interesting to observe their behavior. But in the same time, I knew that observation would only lead to so much. And eventually that observation has to give way to action. I decided to cut back up valley across this slope underneath where the elk were bedded down. And at this point I was trotting pretty fast. And then sure enough, comes the 2 yearlings and they drop down into a ravine. And then just behind them is a cow. When I finally ended her life, in one hand there was a sense of relief and regret that I had even shot her in the first place. And then that extended into this understanding of responsibility. And ultimately I knew that the only thing I could do in this moment was to focus on the task at hand. I removed the pelt one side at a time and started working to take down the quarters and put those into game bags so that they would be protected from dirt and debris. All in all, it took me about 6.5 hours to field dress the elk. We started the slow walk in the dark, back up this valley across the tundra en route to the truck. Every step was arduous and the weight of my pack was spine-crushing. It took more than 5 hours to travel those 5 miles. On the final day of the hunt, I retraced my steps a bit more efficiently with daylight to aid my sense of direction, and went back to where I had left the remaining quarters hanging. Each breath was labored at the high altitude, and all I could do was trudge forward, step by step by step. I, like most people living in the United States, have very little connection to my food. For thousands of years, hunting wild game has been a staple in the diets of humans around the world. And as I arrange these fine cuts of meat on my plate and look down at the creation before me, I was awestruck by the fact that I had hiked this meat out on my back that very same day. The culmination of months of preparation and hardship and learnings. In the days preceding this hunt, I was just a guy with a rifle and a tag for elk. But now I'm a hunter.